Hello, booze and ghouls. It's once again time for my Halloween series. This year for 2022, I am going nostalgic, at least for the people of my generation who grew up primarily in the 90s. I'm going with R.L. Stine's Goosebumps books. For people of my generation, going to the Scholastic Book Fair, that was a huge deal, and Goosebumps was one of the top series. I was more of an Animorphs and Redwall man myself, but nonetheless, these are books that really bring back a lot of childhood memories for a lot of people my age. So this year, you're getting 6 Goosebumps books covered over 5 videos for the Halloween series. Trick or treat. So in this video, we're going to be talking about R.L. Stine's book, Deep Trouble. I'm joined at least temporarily by Frank, who's dressed as a house cat tiger shark. I don't know, it's not as good as Little Count Francula, which we had last year. We couldn't come up with a better sort of shark cat pun. Frank doesn't really like his shark costume, so he's probably not going to stay the whole time. But we're going to talk about Deep Trouble. So it's an interesting book as far as a Goosebumps book goes, in part because the main thing that really kind of occurs isn't actually super scary, necessarily. Or, I guess the thing that's scariest is not really supernatural. So we have our protagonist, who as always in Goosebumps is a young person. We have Billy Deep, or William Deep Jr., as he wants to be known, as a world-famous oceanographer. He and his sister are out on their uncle's research boat. Their uncle, Dr. D, who is I can't think of the name of it, a fish scientist. And basically, whoa, buddy. He almost just toppled off of there. So basically, Billy and his sister, Sheena, they're out just sort of doing ocean stuff. And we get from the first chapter this idea that Billy is particularly dedicated to the idea of oceanic exploration and sort of adventures in the depths of the ocean. Because we have this sort of fantasy that plays out where he is a world-famous ocean explorer, and he is trying to capture the great white stingray. But then something goes wrong with his air tank, and he has to try and make it back to the surface. What we find out at the beginning of Chapter 2 is that, in fact, this is just his fantasy, and basically he was snorkeling, and his snorkel filled with water. We get a couple of sort of warnings from Dr. D about not going near this coral reef, about the dangers of sharks, etc., etc. So we have these sort of good moments where Stine is clearly priming us for, whoa, buddy. Alright, he's off. We get these moments where Stine is clearly priming us for this to be a book about a shark attack. As well as the cover, that lovely fellow right there, tells us this is likely to be a Jaws-type story. So Dr. D says, "Now don't forget, if you see a shark fin, try not to splash around a lot. Movement will attract it. Just slowly, steadily return to the boat." So we have that warning. And Billy thinks to himself, I couldn't help feeling just a little bit excited. I've always wanted to see a real live shark. this is foreshadowing. But interestingly enough, it's not really foreshadowing for the main scary aspect of the story. Shortly after this, Billy goes out and he swims toward the coral reef that Dr. D had told him to stay away from, and he gets attacked by a sea monster. Now, Sheena and Dr. D dismiss this on the premise that there's no such thing as sea monsters. So they assert that this must have just been seaweed or something like this. I wore my Kraken shirt for this because, sea monsters rock. Let's be real. So Billy gets attacked by a sea monster. Dr. D and Sheena are both like, you're just making shit up. And it kind of slightly drops. Like, the idea of the sea monster does come up for a little bit for the next few chapters. But then something really drastic happens that undermines the focus on the sea monster. Before we get to that, actually, in my copy of the book, I just got a used copy off of Amazon or Goodreads or something like that. And in my copy, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. There we go. I got the angle right. So in my copy, somebody has done these nice little line drawings. So that's Billy getting attacked by the sea monster. And we got a bunch of these nice little line drawings that somebody has done in this version of the book, which obviously you don't get to see all of them because you don't happen to have this particular copy that I'm reading, but it's kind of a delightful little thing. So basically, the sea monster kind of gets overshadowed because a couple of people from a marina zoo, come to Dr. D and they're like, we will give you $1 million of research funding if you can capture this mermaid that the local fishermen swear that they have seen. And Dr. D's like, all right, for $1 million, I will give it the old college try. So Billy becomes really fascinated by mermaids. That's the next sort of oceanic obsession he has. So he goes out swimming to try and find the mermaid. Unsupervised swimming in the ocean, which, especially for a child, is not a good thing. If you're a child watching this video, don't go unsupervised swimming in the ocean. That's my public service announcement. But he goes out looking for this mermaid. And he finds, instead, a hammerhead shark. The hammerhead shark starts attacking Billy. It does actually sort of moderately bite his leg, but he manages to partially climb up on this fire coral, which is apparently a sort of poisonous coral that, when human beings touch it, burns their skin. We learned about that earlier in the book when he actually tried to cut across the coral reef in a race with Sheena. But he's trying to escape this shark. He's trying to get up on this coral reef. The shark grabs him. He's going to pull him back in the water. And then all of a sudden, thump, 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 thump. Something starts just beating the shit out of this shark. Like, the shark gets just smacked around by this huge fish tail. And it's a mermaid. Billy is rescued by a mermaid. And then Dr. D and Sheena come along, and they're like, aha, we've got a net. We'll scoop both of you up in this net. Because it's a marine research vessel, so they have nets, they have tanks, they have equipment for capturing, tagging, treating any medical issues that fish have, etc., etc. So that happens. Like, they capture this mermaid, they put her in a tank, and the sort of middle section of the book is really spent on this ethical debate that Billy is sort of having with himself, where he believes that he should free this mermaid. Like, he can see that she is incredibly unhappy, that she wants to be back in the ocean, etc., etc. And because she had rescued him from the shark, Billy feels that he should let her go rather than letting Dr. D essentially sell her to the zoo for $1 million. It kind of never comes to a head. I mean, Billy does attempt to free her a couple of times. He's never successful with it. But then, another boat shows up in the night, and a bunch of dudes get off of it to steal the mermaid. And it turns out that Alexander, who's Dr. D's research assistant, had sold them out. He had told these dudes that the mermaid was there, that they could come and basically kidnap her, and he was going to get $20 million rather than the just $1 million that the Marina Zoo was going to pay. So Alexander betrays them, and the robbers basically lock them in this fish tank. It's glass. I guess, I don't know what the bottom is made of. Probably the bottom is made of metal, but glass on 4 sides, and it's got a screen over the top, filled about 6 feet up with water. So you've got 2 children and 1 shortish man, because Dr. D is fairly compact, as it were, stuck in this tank. They're all trying to keep their heads above water. And then the robbers are like, if we let you live, you will probably tell some people that we have kidnapped this mermaid. So they shove the fish tank into the ocean. It starts sinking down. They can't get the top off it because it basically clamps on from the outside. So it seems that Billy, Sheena, and Dr. D are about to die. A fairly horrible death, trapped in a fish tank, sinking to the bottom of the ocean. But they don't die. They get rescued by a ton of other mermaids who show up and are like, so the mermaids don't talk in human speech, which actually I think is a good touch. The very common thing you sometimes see with mermaid stories where like, oh, we speak English or whatever. Yeah, fucking bullshit. These mermaids speak in sort of clicks, sort of cries, sort of like dolphins, and sonar. So the mermaids rescue them, and then basically the mermaids head off to get their companion mermaid back. Dr. D and the kids follow them in the dinghy to attempt to assist with this endeavor. The robbers, the kidnappers, do wake up during the rescue attempt, and they light the dinghy on fire. But they're like trying to murder these kids and Dr. D. But then the mermaids are like, we're gonna flip your boat over now. So these mermaids do manage to free their companion, and then they just start rocking this boat back and forth, which allows Dr. D and the kids to escape. The question, the big ethical question for Billy then becomes, when the Marina Zoo people come back, is Dr. D going to say, yeah, there was mermaids, we don't have one at the moment, but we definitely had one, we can get you another? Or is Dr. D going to be like, nah, son, ain't no mermaids? And Billy is genuinely not sure what's going to happen. But then Dr. D comes through, he does the right thing, he tells the Marina people, I, as one of the most authoritative oceanographic researchers in the world, am convinced that mermaids are not real. And they're like, all right, we'll take your word for it. We will just stop looking. And that seems like a fairly good place to end. But Billy decides that he's going to go out one more time. He's going to try and look for the mermaid, to say thank you for everything that she has done, and to just sort of check up and make sure she's okay, etc., etc. And where the book ends, bear in mind, we've had that sort of initial concern, the fantasy of the great white stingray. We've had Billy's encounter with the sea monster who may have been seaweed. We've had the incident where he burns himself on the fire coral. We've had the shark attack. We've had the meeting with the mermaid, capturing the mermaid, the ethical dilemma about freeing the mermaid being kidnapped, the rescue of, the near drowning of the entire group of them, Dr. D and the kids, the rescue of them by the mermaids, the rescue of the other mermaid by both the mermaids and Dr. D and the kids. So we've had all that stuff happen. Like, it is an action-packed book. And where we end, so this is Billy. I swam over to the lagoon to search for the mermaid. The sun was high in a pale blue sky. It glowed down on the still lagoon waters, making them glitter as if covered in gold. Mermaid, where are you? I wondered. I was just past the reef when I felt a playful tug on my leg. Sheena, I thought, had she followed me again? I spun around to catch her. No one there. Seaweed, probably, I thought. I kept swimming. A few seconds later, I felt the tug again, harder this time. Hey, it must be the mermaid, I told myself. I turned once again to search for her. The water rippled. Mermaid, I called. A head popped out of the water, a gigantic, slimy, dark green head with one enormous eye and a mouth full of jagged teeth. The sea monster, I shrieked. The sea monster. Would they believe me this time?